Am I terrified for today's video? Yes, absolutely. Am I gonna do it anyway? Yes, absolutely. Because I've said it before on my channel, suffering makes for good content. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Hope you're doing well. This is something I wanted to do for a long time, mostly because I think it'll be A, interesting if it goes okay, B, funny if it fails horribly. I use so many layers in my drawings. I have at least 3 sketch layers. Eventually I will have all my line art merged into one layer, but when I'm working on it, I'll have 2 separate layers for that. I'll have 1 layer for the base colors. I'll have 1 layer for some like shading gradients, 1 layer for highlight gradients, 1 layer for actual shading, 1 layer for actual highlights. Sometimes I'll do a color overlay, and then I'll have a layer for light highlights and any other additional rendering I want to do. And then that's assuming I'm not even including any background elements. Who knows how many layers that's gonna take me. And so, working with a layer, just the one, it's gonna be very interesting. Okay, Zola. I know, I'm not happy about it either. I know, it's upsetting. I want to use more layers too, but it's for the video. Normally before I try and record, I make a little thumbnail of a drawing I'm gonna do. I haven't done that today, mostly because I figured since I am going to be working on 1 layer, I should probably keep it fairly simple. All I did was pick out a character that I wanted to draw. But yeah, I'm scared. So the only course of action I really have, I know how I will sketch. I plan on just doing my regular sketching stuff and then using the airbrush tool to really lighten it up, but that's all I really know that's all I know what I'm gonna do. Other than that, I am gonna cry probably, but also just make it up as I go along. Kind of just go like that, have it frame off. Well, that's not the eraser, and we're already off to a great start. I should change the canvas size, shouldn't I? Let's make it a 9, that's a 3. A 9 by 11. I was about to make another layer, as if this isn't a 1 layer challenge. Increase that density by a lot. See, I think the sketching will go by fairly easily. I think I could do that without too many issues. It's the line art and coloring I'm mostly worried about, because how the fuck am I gonna do that? I normally like super crisp, clean line art, but considering I'm gonna have to do my line art directly on the sketch and not be able to hide the sketch, I don't know how clean of line art we're gonna be able to do. A little cheeky wink. I figured if I am gonna suffer and use only 1 layer, I might as well draw one of my wives to help me get through it. I also wonder if I should try and add some background elements like I normally do, which is gonna be difficult. I think it would be interesting to try, because I normally use, at the bare minimum, 3 for my background elements. Is this an incredibly generic drawing? Yes. But, not gonna lie, kinda need my comfort zone right now. I hate that I can't make the lighter sketch just completely invisible. Not gonna lie, it's throwing me off more than I thought it would. Oh, wait, no. It's exactly the thing I was literally just complaining about. Another thing that I'm beginning to realize is very quickly gonna get on my nerves. Whenever I change something on my newer sketch, I'll just have to end up changing a part of my older sketch, which isn't good if I want to go back and reference something, which I usually do. Let me try and get this hand in here. I wanted her hand to be visible, but I forgot that she has really swooshy bangs, which makes it kind of hard to make the hand visible. That was not very good planning on my part. I don't like that hand. We're just gonna... If I am gonna do a background element, I should probably start planning that now, because I can't just make it up later like I normally do. I mean, I guess I can, but it would be a lot harder to get away with, since it's all gonna be on the same layer. I'm fine. I'm not having regrets. Some sweet collarbone action. Tickle bitties. Important details. Fuck, I did it again. I keep wanting to make the layer underneath transparent, but there is no layer underneath. I almost went to go make the layer transparent again. We love that. We love a dumbass who never learns from their mistakes. When in doubt, make titties bigger. That's what I always say. This arm is wrong. It's wrong and bad, and it's gross. I drew her hand over here, like on her arm, but because of how puffy her sleeves are and the angle of the— oh god, what just happened? The angle of the arm changed a little bit. You can't see it. Alright, change of plans. We will yoink that arm out of there. I know her hand would be somewhere around here, but can't exactly add another layer to draw it for reference, so whoopsies. This is fun. Are you guys having a fun time? Because I debatably am. I keep sloppily selecting things because I keep assuming there's a layer underneath. Let me try and come up with a plan for background stuff. I want to keep it fairly simple because holy shit, I don't want to have to deal with that, but we'll just make like a ribbon or something. I wanted it to be kind of behind her, so I guess I'll draw the rest of her hair and stuff first. I say as I continue to not work on her hair. It's messy, but what part of this video isn't? Let's be honest. Okay, hold on. Something I might be able to do. How does this look? That's better. Oh my god, I'm a genius. I do smart people things sometimes. It makes it on a different layer. Does this count as cheating? Damn it. Alright, time to try and make this symmetrical and cry in the process. This is so hard for my brain to process. Is that right? We're gonna say it's right. I did it! Now I gotta finish it. Fuck. Actually, what I think I might do, instead of trying to do line art, I think I might try put some flat colors down and then do like a cleaner sketch as my line art, I guess. Do I have? I don't have. Fuck, okay, hold on. I'm gonna have to probably blur all of this out. Is this what you guys came here to see? All of my private information? What would be best course of action? How do I add color to this? Yeah, I think I should do this to start, and then, okay, Zola. And then Zola! Chill, my guy! And then I think... Is this the easiest way to do this? I'll start with this for now, and then I guess I'll adjust the colors and such as I do the sketch. I don't know. There's probably so many people watching this video being like, you're so stupid for not doing this, you're so stupid for not doing that. And yeah, you're probably right. Actually, I think I'll do, to make my life a little easier, I will swatch, and I can delete that later. I think as I do this, I'm just gonna have to go straight into rendering some shit, which is very scary. I guess we'll start with this lighter color. Kind of scared about how shading it is gonna go, because I'm gonna have to pick the colors out myself. I wonder if trying to make it more painterly, that would make my life a little easier. This isn't going too bad. Knock on wood, I didn't just jinx it. Kind of want to try and replicate my typical shading style, which obviously is not gonna look quite the same, but I do want to try to kind of make it look like my other drawings, at least to the best of my abilities. Is this fine? I think this is fine. Maybe. I don't know. We'll say it is to make me not cry. I mean, the hand is for sure misshapen. Let's just say that. Next, I might actually tackle this eye and start doing her face before I do the hair. I actually wonder if I should just do all of the face before I do the hair. That might make a lot more sense, actually. Add a heart to the pupil. Love that for her. I don't think I'm gonna bother defining these eyelashes too precisely. I mean, I'm about to fuck them up anyway, so. And these eyebrows real quick before I forget about them. I was blocking the shape for now. That's good. I feel like my highlights are more extreme than that, but anything lighter feels a bit weird. I guess we'll start rendering some shit. And we can... Aha! I'm figuring out secrets. I didn't swatch this color, so we're just gonna... There we go. Not gonna lie. Coloring it's a lot more relaxing than I thought it would be. I thought the sketching would be really easy, but it stressed me out a lot, and I thought that shading would be really hard, but it's honestly really relaxing. I should probably swatch this color somewhere. There we go. It's making me remember I don't really know how lips work. Loki looks like a tongue. Should I just go with it and make it her tongue then? I mean, why not, right? Hi there, it's voiceover Oliver. How you doing? So I originally planned on filming this entire thing as a sketch vlog, as you could probably guess from first half of this video. But as I was working on the drawing more and more, I just found myself getting more lost in the actual process of it, and I wasn't saying much. And then I felt like everything that I was saying was just really repetitive, so we're doing this other part as a speed paint. I think it's because my process for this was a lot different from what I would normally do for a drawing, and so because of that, I ended up focusing a lot more on the art itself, and it was a lot harder for me to do a sketch vlog, a lot harder than I thought it would be. So we're doing this. I talked about it a little bit in the sketch vlog portion, but the sketching was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. Normally I'll have at least 3 different sketch layers. I'll have a really, really rough, loose layout of what I want the pose to be and where everything's gonna go. And then I have a really rough sketch of the character, which is more about getting proportions correct for that specific character and then ironing out the pose just a little bit more. And then after that, I will have my final sketch layer, which is where I really lay out all of the details, and this is the sketch layer that I spend the most time on. And then on top of that, sometimes if I need an additional sketch layer, I will make it. This always ends up being merged into my third sketch layer by the end of it, but sometimes I'll need to sort of re-lay out part of a drawing, I guess. I don't know, that's the best way I can explain it. But in this drawing, if we look at how she's posed, she has one hand next to her cheek and then one hand kind of crossed around her body and reaching over to hold her other arm. And normally, if this were a different drawing, I would make another layer on top of that, lower the opacity of the layer underneath, sketch out the hand a little bit more to make sure I can get that positioning right, and then I would increase the opacity again on the layer below, erase what I didn't need of the hand, and then merge it. Basically, if a part of the drawing is hidden, like how this hand is mostly hidden behind the hand, no, the arm, it makes me able to draw it in a little bit more of an accurate way, and it is a little bit less awkward to look at. But it was really hard for me to do that because a single layer. What I did for the rest of my sketch layers, I basically just sketched out how I would normally sketch out, and then I would play around with the settings on my airbrush tool and lightened up my sketch. So when I had to kind of re-sketch out the hand, I tried to do that with the airbrush. It didn't work out as well, mostly because I was too worried about damaging the rest of the sketch, but I think it got the job done fairly okay. And then another thing that would happen, I often transform a lot in my art. I'll use the transform tool a lot with the sketching phase. I don't really do it as much with line art, but it is there, and then I don't really do it at all when it comes to like my shading and rendering and stuff. But whenever I would try to transform stuff here, since it was all on one layer, I would also transform the lighter sketch underneath, which before going into this, I didn't think that would be a problem. But this made me realize that I reference my rough sketch layer a lot more than I thought I did. Obviously, I used it when making my final sketch layer to help iron out those details. But one thing that I didn't really notice that I do a lot is that I'll flick back and forth between my rough sketch layer and my final sketch layer. Like, I'll make my final sketch transparent, so then that way I can sort of reference what was underneath, and then if I have to make changes, I can see what's better and what's worse a little bit easier. And I think that in itself is the number one reason why sketching was a lot harder than I thought it would be. That's not something I really realized that I did. I mean, I knew I did it, but I didn't know just how much. I know that I kept like trying to make my upper sketch layer transparent, but didn't really work out well. Before I even started filming, I was terrified to do line art, put in flat colors, and render the shit, because oh my god, how was I going to do that? Before I sat down to film this, I knew generally how I would go about the sketching phase. I figured that would make the sketching easy enough, but for me, I really love crisp line art, and so I'll do line art. I'll really spend my time on that and then put my flat colors underneath it, but I knew if I spent as much time on the line art as I did, it wouldn't really matter, because when I put down the flat colors, since it would all be on one layer, it would kind of just fuck up the line art anyway, because I was putting flat colors on the same layer as the line art and as the sketch, and I couldn't make the sketch invisible. I believe I did it in the video where I just color selected all of the lighter color that I used to sketch and deleted that to make it a little bit easier for my brain to process, but there was absolutely no way I would be able to do my normal line art stuff with just a single layer. And I think the line art was by far the hardest thing for me to do in all of this. I really tried to replicate my typical art style, and in some instances I think I did pretty great with it. Like for the rendering, I think I did a fairly decent job at replicating what my art typically looks like. I never shade on the same layer as my flat colors, but I will have a layer on top of that, and then I'll clip it, so then that way I can't draw outside of that, and then I set that to multiply, and I'll just pick various shades of a single hue. And while I wasn't able to do that, because, you know, fucking one layer, I was able to replicate it a little bit. I would color pick something from the flat colors, and then I would adjust the color on the color wheel. A very common thing that I do in my art, I'll shade with like a reddish purple, and then I'll add like orangey yellow highlights, which typically I would use a multiply layer and a shine layer. But for this one, I would just color swatch something, and if it was for the shade, I would move it down and to the right on the color square, and then on the color wheel, I would shift it a little bit closer to that reddish purple area, and then I would do the same thing for the highlights, except up and to the left, and then shift it more towards the yellow. It wasn't always on that color, but just closer to it on the color wheel. Like when I was shading the green parts of this drawing, It was never on that reddish purple area, and it ended up being more of like a bluey green, but just shifting it closer to that color on the color wheel helped me replicate the multiply blending mode a little bit. It's not perfect, but for just one layer, I think I managed pretty okay. And then from there, when it came to rendering and adding highlights and stuff, I basically just did what I would normally do. I feel like I blended a lot more than I normally would, but that's mostly because I didn't have my regular color swatches to go and reference. Like I said, I use different shades of a specific hue, and I'll have those 4 or 5 different shades swatched on the side. And then whenever I think someplace needed a little bit more contrast, a little bit less contrast, a little bit more shading, whatever it was, I would go back, color swatch those, and then just add them wherever I felt they needed to go. But since I was making the colors myself, I found it a little bit more difficult to get the contrast that I feel like I would normally have. I found it a little bit harder to have the saturation and the shadows that I would normally have. Typically, I use pretty saturated colors, and in some places in this drawing, I think you can really see that, like in the hair. I think the shadows in the hair are fairly saturated, and I think the highlights are fairly saturated. But it was really hard for me to get that look while picking the colors myself. I don't know what it is. And I guess just as a result, I ended up blending, maybe in some places a little bit too much, kind of as a way to compensate, I guess. I think that's what I was trying to do. Whether or not it worked, I guess you can be the judge of that. I like it. I had a lot of fun with the shading and painterly type looks. I figured since I was working all on one layer, that more painterly look would be a little bit easier to go for. But overall, I don't think that the rendering is too different from what I would typically do. But if we go back to the line art, I think it looks pretty different from what I would normally do. So usually what I started doing, I will have 2 line art layers. I will have one line art layer set to multiply, and that line art is colored to match the colors underneath. So if I was making this drawing the way I typically would, the line art on the hair would be purple because the hair is purple. The line art on the shirt would be a gray because the shirt is white, and stuff like that. And then when it's set to multiply, it makes it darker and it blends those colors together a little bit nicely. And then I will have a second line art layer on top of that set to overlay with the opacity down. And this I usually set to a color that's super bright and saturated of something that is in the drawing a lot. Does that make any sense? So like for this one, I would probably go with like a really saturated purple, set that to overlay, and then lower the opacity. And it's just a really cool effect that I like. I think it really helps to, if you really want to push a specific color in the drawing, I found that that's a really nice way to do that, because even though the colors of the rest of the line art kind of match what's underneath, it does give everything a little bit more of like a purpley undertone or whatever color you would want it to be. And I really like that effect. Obviously, I could not do that here. The best way I can describe how I did the line art was I kind of just guessed what I thought the colors might look like if I did what I normally did for line art, and in some cases I think it worked fine. In other cases it really did not. And because my drawing process for this was a lot different from what I normally would do, I feel like I forgot what my art looked like. Obviously, like, I still think this looks like something that I drew, but for the line art, if you've seen my art before, I'll add like hatching, for example, in my line art. But because I was doing so much rendering before I did the line art, I feel like I kind of forgot where I would put line art, where I would omit line art, where I would add hatching, where I would add extra lines, where I would add various line sizes, etc. And also definitely the line art is a lot less clean than what I would normally go for. And I wouldn't say that this line art is messy necessarily, but I would definitely say it's more messy compared to what I would typically do for line art. And that's because if you use the techniques that I normally do, there ends up being a lot of different colors within the line art because of the way that the line art is set to different blending modes and how the shading is set to different blending modes and the colors underneath all of that. It's just a lot of different colors ended up being in the line art. And if I wanted to kind of replicate that within this drawing, I had to do it more in chunks, if that makes any sense. So like if I had to make a single line for the hair, right? If you look at the way that I shade hair, there's like the highlights on the top, the shadows on the bottom, and normally when I would outline it, I would just outline it. But the way that I did this, I would have to outline the highlights separately and then the shading separately, because if I didn't do that, I would risk damaging not only the work I put on the hair underneath the line art, but also everything around that. Does that make any sense? I've been sitting here trying to think about how to explain that. That's the best way I can come up with. I don't know if it makes any sense. But another thing that was really different from what I would typically do, I had to really think hard about what I wanted to shade and outline first. Normally what I would do, I would just start at the hair and then just work my way down. And the reason that I would do that is because I always select the area that I was working on. So like I would select the hair, and then that way I would add the shading and the highlights all at once and not worrying about damaging other parts around it. While I did use the select tools a lot in this drawing, since there wasn't just a single flat colors layer that I can go to and easily select a specific area, I had to be a lot more careful with how I did stuff. So instead of just being able to move from the top of the drawing to the bottom of the drawing, I had to think of what parts of the drawing were on top of the other parts. So I started with the hand, which might have been a mistake. It probably would have been a lot easier if I started with the face and then I did the hand, and then after that I shaded her bangs, and then I went to her hair bows, and then I finished the bangs because the bangs kind of went on top of the hair bow, and then I would do the ribbon in the background, and then I would add certain parts of her hair, and then I would do a specific part of her shirt, and then I would go back to the hair. I would bounce around a lot more than I typically would when rendering a drawing. Like if I shaded her shirt first and then went to shade the hair that was kind of behind her body, I knew that when I was trying to shade that, I would be more likely to mess up the area of the shirt that I just worked on, you know? But also, speaking of the shirt, the way that I do flat colors, I will just make one solid block of color, and then I will lock the transparent pixels and then just add color wherever it needed to go. And with the way that I color normally, all of the white pixels would be colored in because they would be a different color initially. And while I guess I could have done that for this drawing, it would have been a lot harder for me to do that and still be able to change it back to white later, I guess. Because if I tried to change it all to one color, I would run the risk of losing line art, or I would run the risk of losing the sketch underneath to make it easier to do line art. So I basically just guessed. I tried to select every area where the shirt would be and then color it in white, but like after I had already started working on it a little bit. So I would add in a little bit of shading while I could still reference the sketch underneath, and then I would try and select the white areas, color that in, and pray it worked out fine. And for the most part, it did. When I was done with this drawing, I did make the background of it transparent just to see, which thinking about it now, I could have done while I was making the thing, but I didn't. And I definitely missed a few white pixels, but it's fine. Overall, though, I am really happy with how this drawing turned out. I think all things considered, it came out a lot better than I thought it would. It does make me want to play around with more painterly drawings more, but with multiple layers, because even though I did really enjoy the process at one point, and it was really nice to just kind of digitally paint, I also feel like I could have benefited from using multiple layers, whether that was to iron out a sketch a little bit more, help me make colors, whatever it may be. I would like to do this with the comfort of more layers. But I will give it back to Real-Time Oliver, but first, a quick little Patreon break for those of you who missed it in my last video. I do have a Patreon now, and some of the perks include a special shout out, which I will do right now. I'd like to give a big thank you to all of my patrons for helping make this video possible, especially my tiers 3 and 4 members. Big shout out to Jules, Sammy Yang 127, Wildflower, Hale, The Tiny Artist, Sammy Cooper, Jupiter Draws, Nyoko Arts, Sage Rosado, Ellie, Isla, It's Dorky Arts, Cassaroodle, Star Peachy, Orange Mango, Anna, Solisor Uwu, Nayhaven, Livia M, Kiera, Hikari Yu, Jamie, Jadios, Creatively Anxious, Everyday Today, Grace Leanne, Dazzy Bones, That Demon Hickson, Michael Sasha Rose, Red Boots the Time Traveler, Cyphernatic, Bloomerang, Kaya Knight, Ghost of Miles, Lauka 2, Ava Krupp, Yopolis, Clementine Jam, Lovely Siren, and Jay Johnson. Big thank you to all of you guys. I really appreciate it. If you want to be a part of my Patreon, check the links in the description box below. Here she is. I didn't mean to zoom right into her boobs, I promise. That was an accident. But here she is. I'm really happy with how this turned out. Honestly, I had surprisingly a lot of fun. There were definitely times where it was frustrating, but I like it. I think I did a pretty great job, all things considered. For sure, this would have been easier to do with multiple layers, but it was a fun challenge. I really liked it. And you know, I can't say I'm gonna give up all of my layers. I do quite like all of my layers, but this is a fun thing to try out, and I'm really happy that I did it. I might try and do more digital paintings like this in the future, because it was really nice to kind of sit back and just blend endlessly, I guess. For sure, there are times in this drawing where I felt like I maybe overblended a little bit, but I had fun, and I hope you had a fun time too. Let me know what you think. But I think that's about all I have for you today, so if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Let me know if you've tried to do the 1 layer challenge before, and also how it went. Let me know how many layers you use in your drawing, because I use a lot and I want to feel validated. And if you are new here, hello, my name is Oliver. I post new videos here every single week. Sometimes I'll do challenges like this. This is my character Nicolette. This is my wife. I'll talk a lot about my original characters. I draw my original characters. Sometimes I'll make fan art like last week. I'll do whatever I want, really. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, feel free to subscribe. I'd love to have you here. And if you want to see more from me, you can follow me on social media. Those will be on screen now and linked in the description box below. Also check out my Patreon. That's new. I'm having a lot of fun with it. Feel free to check out my different perks. I would love to have you over there too. And if you want to see more of my videos, there will be some on screen now and linked in the iCard for you to check out if you want. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.